Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of You Make It Happen. This one is going to be by listener request. I got a few requests for how do I know if my relationship is unhealthy? And I'm going to go over that, and as well as the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse of relationships. Yes, that really is a thing. Thank you for all the love on social media, for the DMs, for the support, for the praise, and thank you for the listeners supporting the podcast on social media. I'm Missy.Traveler on TikTok, Missy the Traveler on Instagram, Missy the Traveler, all one word and in quotes, because I don't pay for YouTube advertising on YouTube. And you can find the podcast there. You can find social media videos on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. I haven't done YouTube Shorts yet, but it's on my agenda. There's just a lot of promoting that goes into a podcast, and sometimes it's energy draining. So I give it the best that I can and the energy that I have for it. And that's why you're getting an episode now, because I am making an episode by listener request, how to tell if your relationship is unhealthy and or toxic. So if you have questions about this that I don't address in this episode that aren't already addressed, then send me a message, send me an email, youmakeithappenpodcast@gmail.com. Send me your episode requests. Send me all the things. And if you are so inclined, share it with a friend. The biggest compliment you can give me about the podcast is sharing it. Sharing it with somebody you think will appreciate it. Share it anonymously if you don't want to be like, oh, I was listening to a mental health podcast and I don't want anybody to know. Then share it anonymously. Leave somebody an anonymous note or send an anonymous text message. I don't know if you can block a text number or how that works, but tell somebody about it. And that's the best compliment you can give for the podcast. So I appreciate y'all listening. I appreciate all the feedback so far and the lovely comments. And I do read all the reviews on Apple, Amazon, Spotify. I read all those. Yeah, I take the time to read them. And thank you for those that vote it 5 stars. So let's get into the episode topic. How to tell if your relationship is unhealthy. And I know there are some obvious ways, and I'm going to go over them anyway. And there's some that are, and to be clear, this is unhealthy, not necessarily abusive, and some of this is going to kind of overlap. For example, signs of an unhealthy relationship, being or feeling like you're not safe, that is a sign of an unhealthy relationship. Even if you just feel it in your gut, even if you know logically that you're safe with this person, if you feel unsafe, not a healthy relationship. Along those same lines, but a little less obvious, if you feel unseen, not heard, misunderstood, or not understood, not the signs of a healthy relationship. Those things can be navigated if your partner is willing to work and do the work with you or do the work on their own and grow and learn how to see you, how to hear you, and how to understand you, which that may or may not be the case. So I'll get into the Four Horsemen of their relationship apocalypse later, which is from John and Julie Gottman. I haven't listened to their podcast, but I've heard it's wonderful. But let's just go over some other basic ways that you can tell that you're in an unhealthy relationship. So we went over feeling unsafe, being not seen, not heard, not understood. Also, just feeling generally unsupported. Like if this isn't your person, if this is not the person you go to immediately for support and love and comfort, that's not a healthy relationship, probably. Again, not absolutes, not black and white. Likely an unhealthy relationship. If you're feeling disrespected, if you feel like you're always the person to blame, that's probably not a healthy relationship either. If you feel controlled or just like feeling like you're not yourself, feeling like you have to perform, feeling performative or putting on a mask in your relationship, those are bad signs. If you have to change who you are, or if you change your friends or change your contacts, or you're not allowed to talk to so-and-so, or your wife or spouse or partner or husband or whomever disapproves of your communication with so-and-so. Let's say you communicate with an ex, because this is a hot potato issue for a lot of people in committed relationships. I don't want you talking to your ex. Okay, that's usually a sign of that person's insecurity, whoever is dictating the I don't want you talking to your ex, or I don't like this, or this is not okay. It's a sign of their insecurity. They need to do the work on themselves, because unless you have an inappropriate relationship with your ex, in which case, why are you in the relationship that you're in the first place? And to be clear, I should have prefaced this with, I'm talking about committed monogamous relationships. This is not necessarily poly and E&M world, although a lot of these things can apply to those relationships as well. Like, you still need to feel supported. You still need to feel respected. You still need to feel seen, heard, and understood. And you still need to have healthy communication with other. So these principles really do apply to any type of relationship. When I speak in heteronormative speak, it's the lens that I was brought up with. It's the lens that I have. I generally have only had monogamous relationships for the most part in my history, with a few exceptions here and there, but I've never been polyamorous per se. I participate in ethical not monogamy, but that's a whole different story, and we're not doing story time right now. I might do story time in this episode, just not story time right now. So let's circle back. What is a healthy relationship? What is not a healthy relationship? So controlling behavior, and it may not seem like it when your wife or your partner or your husband or your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, insert label here that applies to you, says you're not allowed to talk to your ex. That is controlling behavior. That is a sign of their insecurity, of their deep-seated issues, of their core wounds that they haven't worked on, of the work that they haven't done. It's really unhealthy, as a short version of that. It's really unhealthy for not just them, but also for you and your relationship, because that is also controlling behavior. And controlling behavior, that can be a slippery slope. It can lead to a lot of untenable things in a relationship. It can be bad. And it can be part of the Four Horsemen of the apocalypse, where it leads to criticism, because maybe they criticize you if you decide to have a relationship with your ex, or you set a boundary and say, I'm not going to be controlled by my partner. So if my partner says I can't have contact with an ex whom I have a platonic relationship with, or I haven't seen in a decade, or I don't talk to regularly, or I don't have any sort of inappropriate relationship with, let's just say you have a relationship with your ex because of the kids you shared, or whatever, or for whatever reason you maintain contact or want to maintain contact or something to that effect. The controlling behavior easily segues into criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. You remember when I mentioned the Four Horsemen of the apocalypse? That's what they are. Those are the Four Horsemen of the apocalypse of relationships that was designated by John and Julie Gottman in Washington State, as a matter of fact. So fun shout out to Washington State. But anyway, the Four Horsemen: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, stonewalling. And I mentioned that in the episode with the amazing guest, Matt Marquez, who is an amazing relationship coach. And we talked about what is detrimental to a relationship and how his relationship ended up being something that he wasn't expecting to have issues with, because they didn't start with any problems and he came from a secure background, that sort of thing. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. It's really good. That was episode 19, and he was just a phenomenal guest. I'd love to have him on again. So circling back, that sort of behavior, that insecure, I'm not okay with you doing X, Y, and Z. And I just use the contacting your ex as an example because it's prevalent in a lot of relationships. And I got this question from a listener about, my boyfriend doesn't want me to talk to my ex. He says I'm not allowed to. What am I supposed to do about that? Well, you can do what you want to do about it. And if you're looking for the answer of, what would I do in a healthy, committed relationship? And it sounds like the relationship is monogamous. A, I would need more information. But B, to answer it in general and broad terms, if you want a healthy relationship, you can say, I understand that you're feeling insecure, or I understand that you may feel threatened about my relationship with my ex. I see my ex once a month, or insert however frequently you see your ex here. It's always platonic. There's nothing inappropriate going on. There's no sexual innuendo. There's no flirting. Just so you know, there's no threat. Or, you can just be clear and say, I love you. You are the person I want to be with. And I enjoy my relationship with my ex because of X, Y, and Z. Because, they make me laugh, or because I enjoy talking about our past, or I enjoy talking about the kids, or for whatever reason, choose to maintain a relationship with your ex, if that's a choice that you want to make. or have made, then you can be clear with your partner why you're choosing this. And if they still decide to tell you no, that's controlling and that's unacceptable. You can say, I understand your proclivities on the matter. I understand that you don't want me to see this person. And you have to decide for you, is this a deal breaker? Is this something that you're willing to put up with? Are you willing to accept the controlling, maybe narcissistic behavior, maybe abusive behavior? Because control, borderline abusive. Yeah, that borders on abuse, if not becomes abuse, depending on the nature of the control, the context. Obviously you would need a lot more details here, but that is a bad sign, when they're trying to control you. And you have to decide, what am I going to put up with and what am I not going to put up with? Am I going to try to hide this? Because if you're hiding behavior from your partner, that's automatically an unhealthy relationship, especially if you're hiding your behavior from your partner. Why do you have to hide? Is that a healthy relationship? Shouldn't you have good open communication, honest open communication? Yeah. So let's go over a few more things and circle back to what is an unhealthy relationship and what does that look like? When you feel disrespected, if you feel isolated, that may be the result of narcissistic abuse. And I'm not saying it is, I'm saying it may be. If you feel controlled, also may be the result of narcissistic abuse. And I know more about narcissists than I know about antisocial personality disorder, which I understand is more rare than narcissists anyway. And there can be narcissistic behavior that doesn't necessarily mean that your partner is a narcissist. So we're human beings. We can all exhibit different types of behavior, including narcissistic behavior. If you're putting on a mask, if you're people-pleasing, if you're becoming someone else to please or just to not piss off your ex, if you're walking on eggshells, I referenced the book Walking on Eggshells, which is about borderline personality disorder. Do a little research and look online and, take some tests and fill them out as if you were your ex or, is my partner borderline, and see what you can find online. And do a little digging and say, I wonder why I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. Well, that's a really unhealthy sign. Like gaslighting. I mean, I'm going to go over some obvious things here too. Like gaslighting, that's a super obvious unhealthy sign. If you think your partner is gaslighting you, or in your gut that they're gaslighting you, if you catch them lying or you have to lie to them on a regular basis, obviously if there's any sort of physical abuse, like I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, if there's physical or emotional abuse, then that is unhealthy. And I know that goes without saying, and yet I'm going to say it anyway. If there is physical or emotional abuse or psychological abuse or manipulation, that is automatically an unhealthy, potentially toxic. I have an episode where we differentiate between unhealthy and toxic, and abusive and toxic. Those are two different kind of things. Listen to the episode with Louisiane, really good episode. All that stuff can happen without physical abuse happening, and physical and mental and emotional abuse can happen without jealousy or betrayal or gaslighting or disrespect. These things are not mutually exclusive. If you have any of these things happening, take another look at your relationship and ask yourself, is this for me? Also, I've had a question from a listener. I'm dissatisfied with my sex life, but I'm too scared to leave. What do I do? Well, that's a difficult one to answer. And I'm going to circle back to more signs that your relationship is unhealthy in just a moment. But I want to address that question first before I forget it. And I have it written down here. But if your sex life is disappointing and you don't want to leave, what do you do? I mean, you can have a conversation about an open relationship, but this person indicated that didn't go well and that wasn't going anywhere for them. So what do we do in that instance? It's not like you can really find a way to have a healthier sex life with your partner unless you find a way to do that for yourself, which may work and may entice your partner into more sex. But you shouldn't try to manipulate, cajole, or otherwise influence them into having more sex with you, because that's not healthy either. So it depends, right? There's so much nuance, there's so much detail, and we're never in the other person's relationship. Even when we ask our closest friends or family for advice, we're not that person. I can never know what's truly going on in your relationship except you. You are the only person. I can never know this. You are the only one who's going to really know what's right for you and what's wrong for you. So take it for what it's worth, take it with a grain of salt and just understand that this is an outsider's perspective with very minimum information. So from what information I do have about this, I would just take an introspective, hard look at your relationship and say, is this what I want? If you stayed in this relationship for the next 5 years, 10 years, and that's, ostensibly your goal because you've decided to be in this long-term committed relationship monogamously, then are you going to be happy with that same sex life in 5 years, 10 years, whatever? Or would that be a deal breaker for you? Would that be a deal breaker in a new relationship for you? Then maybe it's time to take a look and decide, is this something you want to continue to pursue? And yes, it's really scary and really difficult to let something go, especially a serious committed relationship, especially one that somebody's been in long-term already. It's so scary to be alone. It is. And it's better than being with the wrong partner. And I know that that's easier said than done. Like, believe me, I get it. I've been there. I spent, I don't know how many years in an unhealthy relationship back many, many, many moons ago, decade or so ago, however long ago it was, because I was too scared to leave, because I was too scared to be alone. And eventually, I decided that I was worth more and I would be happier alone than I would in this unhealthy, toxic relationship, and abusive on both sides, like back and forth, blame on both sides. But I decided eventually that it was better to move on and take care of me than stay in something that I knew would cost me my identity and that I would have to change or be unhappy for long term. Let me get off this ADHD path and circle back yet again to how to tell if your relationship is unhealthy. So we went over some of the more obvious signs. If the relationship feels disproportionate, meaning you do 90% of the work 90% of the time to maintain the relationship or maintain connection, that's unhealthy. Like, let's say you do 80% of the work 20% of the time. Okay, that's reasonable because that's only 20%. And the other person does 80% of the work. The other, 60% of the time, and then 20% of the time is missing and whatever. There's a lot of weird math in there, but you get the idea. So I can't remember which one of Brené's works she discussed it. Relationships ebb and flow. And as much as we've all heard 50-50, we want a 50-50 relationship. That's just not realistic. It's not realistic. It may be ideal. We want 50-50 effort all the time. Yeah. Good luck with that. Let me know how that works out for you. Relationships just don't work that way. So how does a healthy relationship work? Well, I love her example of how she does it with her husband. She measures her energy for the relationship that day. And let's say she's sick. Let's say she's really sick. She's down with the stomach flu. She's got no energy, no capacity to work on the relationship, no capacity for even getting her kids ready for school. They're all grown up now, but this was, back when she was taking care of them younger. And she said, I've got 10%. Like, I've got 10% to give to the relationship today. And your relationship needs 100% every day. And her husband would say, well, I've got like 70% because I feel like I'm starting to get what you got, but I've got this happening today and I'm not super busy at work and I can come home and make dinner and take the kids, but I'm not feeling like 100% today. I've got 70% to give. So together, that's 80%. That's 80% of the relationship. And then they figure out, where are we going to get the last 20%? Where is that going to come from? And they work together to say, and she, let's say she wasn't physically ill. She's like, well, I'm going to go play pickleball for a couple of hours and then I'll get some more energy back. She'll get some more spoons. Spoon theory, we've talked about that. Get the energy and then contribute that to a relationship. And maybe we'll have 20 minutes of one-on-one, just talking or cuddle time or whatever. Whatever strengthens their relationship and their connection. Whether that's talking or cuddles or both or whatever they need. Let's say it's going to a show together or dancing or whatnot. Take your pick, whatever strengthens your relationship and your connection with your partner. And I absolutely love her equation here of checking in their relationship on a daily basis or as frequently as they, remember to check in about it. Like, I've got 50% today, Steve. How much do you have? And Steve's like, well, I've only got 30. And she's like, okay, well, that's only 80. Where's the other 20% going to come from? I'm going to go play pickleball and he's going to have his book club and be renewed because he's an extrovert. I think he's actually an introvert, but I'm just giving you ideas of how they work together to come up with any missing percentage from how their relationship and their healthy relationship is going to be 100%. And it's not going to be 100% every day, but they get as close as they can, and they make a concerted effort every single day to work on that and be better for one another. And if that means taking a break for your mental health, or reading, or taking downtime, or physical exercise, or time away by yourself if you're an introvert, or time away with your friends to re-energize, whatever works for you to give you some more energy so you can contribute that to your relationship. That, I think, is a really good example of a healthy relationship and how a healthy couple communicates effectively. I've got 15% today, which is unusually low. Like, let's say you normally have 60% or 80%. I often found myself doing close to 90% of the work in one of my previous unhealthy relationships, my longest term relationship. I noticed, and I got tired of it. I realized, why am I doing all the work in this relationship? I was doing probably 80 to 90% most of the time, 80 to 90% of the time, which, as we know, is disproportionate and unhealthy. And you're, thinking, wait, you were doing that? Yeah, I was doing that. I was insecure. I did not love myself. I was anxiously attached. I was unhealthy in so many ways. And I truly loved the person that I was with. I was deeply in love with them. And so I gave more of myself away. And I didn't people please or turn into somebody else. I just wasn't doing the work at that time. And so there was a really unhealthy version of me giving away too much of my energy and my effort and love to somebody who wasn't giving it back to me. Not in the same way, not in the same level of effort. And it's not like it was always like that. There was a time where I lived with my partner, and then there was a lot more reciprocal effort. And it felt a lot more even and a lot healthier. And it just only lasted a while. I wish that would have lasted forever, because I remember sitting in bed one time thinking, here's story time for y'all. I remember sitting in bed one time thinking, oh my God, I'm truly happy. I am the happiest I've ever been. And then I was so afraid of losing it. And if you've listened to all the episodes before this, you know what I'm going to say. I was foreboding joy. I was doing the thing that we do as humans where I'm like, oh, work is good. Love is good. Life is good. House is good. Holy shit. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Who's going to get hurt? When am I going to lose this relationship? When is the other shoe going to drop? And Brene explains that analogy, I think, in the HBO special, which I thought was pretty interesting. Or she explained it in something else. Anyway, I like that. And it wasn't like a revelational moment. It wasn't an aha moment, but I did sit up and realize, oh my God, this is the happiest I've ever been. This is as good as it gets. And I was deliriously happy with the partner that I was with, because I finally got the reciprocal amount of effort that I had wanted all along. And it's not like there was some magic wand or I did something to make that work. He just apparently decided one day that he was going to put the effort in. And then that changed again, and things went back to, 80-20, 90-10, me doing most of the work and me being the only one fighting to save the relationship. And I know that relationships ebb and flow. And now I look back and I think, okay, well, I wonder if it would have been different, but I think I did the right thing. I think that I made a healthy choice to leave something that was not healthy for me, somebody that was taking their emotional pain out on me. And I was, doing that too. And it wasn't to the same extent. And that's another long story that I'll tell you guys maybe in another episode or another day. But I've droned on long enough. So I'm going to circle back to some of the unhealthy things that can be signs of a abusive or just unhealthy in general relationship. Control, stonewalling. And what is stonewalling? Yeah, I got that question because I mentioned it on another episode. What is stonewalling? It's basically being emotionally completely unavailable. Like, I'm fine. Everything's good. Nope, we're good. Go away. Like, it's I'm not going to give you anything. I'm not going to give you the details. I'm not going to give you any emotional insight into me. I'm not going to give you any insight into how I'm feeling. It's I think, the most deadly of the Four Horsemen of the apocalypse. I'm going to stonewall you and just not share. And it's not like ignoring or the silent treatment or anything to that effect necessarily. It's simply not communicating, stonewalling your partner. So that's obviously a very bad sign, but just being defensive in general, also a bad sign, and also one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So I know I said them earlier, but I'm going to reiterate them because they're just so important. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Those are the big four. Others are like isolating, being passive aggressive, name calling, which is shaming, disproportionate relationship effort, conflict avoidance, dishonesty, ignoring your needs and only catering to their needs, spending all your time together. Oh, that's a sneaky one. That's one that people don't necessarily recognize or think of. Spending too much time together. You need to have your own life, your own hobbies, your own interests, your own friends, your own pursuits. You need to be your own whole human being in order to have a healthy relationship. So spending a lot of time together, all your time together, free time, work, all this, too much. Too much. You are not independent of that person. You kind of turn into that person or vice versa, and it's just unhealthy. Because it's a sign of codependence. It means you can't be happy on your own. And as much as I've read Codependent No More several times, and I think the information's a wee bit outdated, there are other schools of thought that say codependence isn't necessarily a bad thing. We're humans. We're designed to be dependent on other beings to enjoy life and to socialize and to feel healthy. Because like I said in an episode not that long ago about how your mental health matters, it is a bigger sign of mortality and then a much bigger deal to be void of happy, healthy relationships than smoking or obesity or cancer. I mean, well, smoking leads to cancer. Anyway, you get the idea. So, all right. I know I've popped around a bit, but I do want to circle back. Betrayal, jealousy, lack of trust. I know I mentioned control, but I got to say it again because it's so important. Lack of emotional intelligence. That's one that's a little bit more subtle that you may not notice. That can lead to an unhealthy relationship because that person can't communicate effectively. If you feel controlled or manipulated, and like I said, no respect for your boundaries and lack of communication. So if you're saying, hey, I have a platonic relationship with my ex, let's circle back to that example, and I want to have coffee with them once a year or once a month or whatever. There's nothing inappropriate going on. You need to, trust our relationship, trust the love I have for you, and know that I'm your partner and nothing is going to change that unless one of us decides we want it to change. Just the fact that you have to explain yourself to your partner is already a bad sign. Like, they should trust you. And I know I'm shoulding. I know. I heard it too. But they should trust you. They should know that you have a strong relationship. And if you don't, then you have bigger issues to work on than you just having a relationship with your ex or talking to that person or whatever. Okay, so I've droned on about how to tell if your relationship is unhealthy long enough. If you still have questions or you're still not sure because of subtle behaviors or nuance or context, look online or talk to a therapist. Obviously, talk to a therapist. Mental health professional is number one. You have to find one that's a good fit. I refer you back to episode 4, how to find a good therapist. And it may be more subtle than you think. If you're asking your friends and family, is this healthy? It's probably not. If you're asking other people, was this abusive? It's probably was. You go with your gut. If you know in your heart and your gut that this doesn't feel right or doesn't feel healthy, it probably isn't. And also, and I know this is hard to hear, but look in the mirror. What do I contribute to this? Did I start this unhealthy relationship? Did I attract an unhealthy person? Why am I attracted to somebody who is bad for me? Why am I attracted to toxic relationships? Why am I attracted to somebody who is abusive? Why am I attracted to somebody who would do or say these things or make me feel this way or whatever? Look in the mirror and start doing the work. I know that's hard. I know it is. I know it is because I've done it. I don't just say, oh yeah, that sounds hard. I don't think I want to do that either. Like, it sounds like a hard time. I know it's hard. I know it's hard because I've been there. Because I've been the one who was too afraid to look in the mirror or didn't even think to look in the mirror, but was really probably just too afraid to look in the mirror and say, why am I attracting emotionally unavailable people? Why am I in unhealthy relationships where I'm getting abused? Why am I part of this? Why am I subconsciously attracting these people? And then is that parent-child dynamic playing out? Oh yeah, it was big time. And I didn't know that much at the time, but when I first started, it's like, how am I to blame? What am I contributing to this? And even if you have no fault in an unhealthy relationship, you didn't do anything to participate in the unhealthy part of that, you attracted that person and or you've stayed with that person. So let's look in the mirror. Why am I staying with this person? What am I so afraid of? Why is vulnerability so hard for me? Because it's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to be the first one to leave. It's hard to be the first one to say, this isn't okay. It's hard to be the first one to set a boundary. Say, I'm not okay with you talking to me this way or treating me this way or doing this or trying to disallow behavior of mine or whatever. It is really hard because that's scary and you open yourself up for rejection. And then it goes back to those core wounds, those core narratives, those core childhood shaming wounds that a lot of us, if not all, most of us have. And those are hard to look at, let alone hard to address and start to heal. And you can do this. You can. I have faith in you. All right, I've droned on about this long enough. Let's get into a couple fun things, a couple fun travel tips, and then I will let you guys return to your normal daily life instead of heavy listening to self-improvement shit, which is hard to hear sometimes. All right, let's get into those travel tips. All right, the fun part. Travel tip number 1. In my opinion, this is all my opinion, so take it for what it's worth. In my opinion, the priority pass is worthwhile. I don't buy it directly because I don't like the version that you get when you buy it directly. But I do think the priority pass with the travel credit card or just the priority pass in general is worth it. You get lounge access. I don't particularly like the lounge at SeaTac. It's definitely one of the bottom worst 5 lounges I've ever been to. Insofar as amenities, food choices, drink choices, accessories, and overall aesthetic, it is really disappointing, which is sad because I live in Seattle and that's the lounge that I have access to. But overall, the priority pass worldwide, super worthwhile. I think it's worth the money. I think it's a couple $100 to buy it directly, but if you get it through a travel credit card, it's a way better deal. So that's actually 2 tips in one. The travel credit card that I like the best is the Chase Sapphire. I don't like corporate banks. I don't like big corporations and giving them my money. And this particular credit card, this bank, they're on a very short list of options for good travel credit cards. So it's not that it's going to be my first choice to go with a credit card. It's a big, giant corporate bank. They got bailouts back in the day, et cetera, et cetera. Yet it's on a short list of options. So I like this option the best. It also comes with free global entry, which is good for every 5 years. So it's not like, that makes the credit card pay for itself. But that credit card has $300 in travel credit. And I generally find it worth it per year, $300 in travel credit per year. Plus, it'll pay for global entry. It comes with a priority pass. I think it's worthwhile. No, this is not a paid advertisement. I just happen to like this card and recommend it as a traveler. So that's 2 or maybe 3 tips in one. That's 2 really, for sure. The third is, and I know I've mentioned it before, but it's so important, so I will say it again. The third tip is global entry is worthwhile. It's about $100, I think, unless they've raised the price recently. $100. It lasts 5 years. It automatically comes with TSA PreCheck. If you're going to travel internationally at all, or you think you might, it is worth it to spend the extra $10 or $15, the difference between that and TSA PreCheck, to just get the global entry. Or if it comes with your travel credit card, then even better. Because it's so worth the money. TSA PreCheck and global entry combined, well worth the money. Number 4, and I know this is a repeat as well, but it's so important that I have to say it again. Only travel with 1 pair of shoes. It just usually isn't worth it to bring another pair of shoes. I have taken them on trips to Europe. I usually travel in the winter or the fall or when it's colder, and I wear my most comfortable, warmest walking shoes that are practical for almost all occasions. And if I really need another pair of shoes, well, I haven't. It hasn't happened. I've packed another pair of shoes in the past and learned from my mistake, knowing that I never wore them. I wore my comfiest, warmest walking shoes the entire time. which happen to be Uggs. And I know, you can judge me all you want. I was going to say, don't judge me. You can judge me all you want. I know that they're not always attractive and they're expensive, but they accommodate my super wide feet and they're very, very comfortable and good for long distance walking. All right, let's wrap it up. Send me your questions. Send me your comments. Send me your thoughts on the episode. Send me your boundaries. Send me why your relationship is unhealthy, or send me your questions about how to deal with a problem in your relationship. I am more than happy to answer anything that I can. I get to as much as I possibly can. I am Missy.Traveler on TikTok, Missy the Traveler on Instagram, You Make It Happen podcast at gmail.com, or follow the You Make It Happen podcast on Facebook. There's a secret travel insiders group that I somewhat update occasionally on Facebook and put tips and tricks and stuff in there as I think to do that. And I try to update Facebook with the various little promotional social media videos I make online. So send me your messages, send me your thoughts. As always, thank you for listening. Work your shit out. Don't do it on other people. Please try to work it out on your own. I beg you. And take care. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for listening.